Hello everybody. Yep, we're doing some science, we're doing some critical thinking, that's what we're all about. So we're going to talk about building science, point, counterpoint, and this is going to deal with the paper that you're doing in this class. Remember, these lecturettes are tied specifically to assignments. The chapters in your book, I expect you to read before the corresponding chapters, before you look at these lecturettes. Remember, these are extensions tied to the assignments. What's going to be tied specifically? What makes you accountable for the book reading? You're right, it's the quizzes. So that's how this is going to go down, and this is how we're going to organize our world. Penelope is still with us. She loves doing this. I don't know why. So she's a ham, I guess. There you go. I love cats, in case you haven't figured that out yet. So sometimes we'll have cats in the lecture. There's Rosie. I got Rosie. She was a stray. That's where all our cats are strays. Back about 5-6 years ago, there was some horrendously cold weather. It was so cold that I would go to school. It would be below zero. It would not get above zero all day long at school, and I would come home in the dark because it was fall semester, right? Or no, maybe it was spring semester, but like January, it's still dark. And Rosie had been on the porch, eating off the porch for a couple days, and then finally she just said, "You have to take me inside." So I did. And she's been with us ever since. So there's Rosie. Let's talk about building science, point, counterpoint. Discussion and contradiction, that's what a lot of this is about. And I have some fond memories of some scary times when I was in graduate school. I joined the social cognition research group, and this was 4 or 5 faculty members in the social area, and then all like 15, 18 of us social psych graduate students. And what do we do there? Well, the function was we met every Wednesday. It was a 2-hour meeting, which is a little long, at noon to 2, right? Every Wednesday. What was the function? Well, we might discuss our hypotheses. We might review study designs. We might critique people's presentations that they were going to take to a conference. We might develop and explore new theories. It was a tremendous time of learning, but it was also scary, because if it was your day on the hot seat, it's like, hey, this is what I want to research for my dissertation. And they go, hey, let's hear it. And then you do your PowerPoint presentation, most likely, of what you're going to do. And then people pick on you, and they ask you questions. And sometimes they ask you questions that you can't answer. I remember Dr. Von Hippel, Bill Von Hippel, who I love dearly as a human being, would scare the shit out of me because he would sit there and ask questions, you know. And I remember I did some research with my advisor Tetlock, and I presented it in the research group, and Von Hippel goes, "That's really good research, Mark. That's really interesting that you're giving evidence, you know, that you say these mindsets occur, but what's your evidence?" And I said, well, because, and I flubbed the answer. I wasn't clear on it. And then he asked me the question again. I flubbed it again. And about the 3rd time around, he's rewording the question, and finally I'm starting to discover, and I'm like, oh shit. Boy, I really don't have any evidence, do I? And he said, no, it doesn't look like you do. And he said, how are you going to get any? And I said, I have to generate some hypotheses that are testable to test this very idea. I have to manipulate the mindset and show that I can turn it on or off in the laboratory. And he said, that's basically the deal, dude. And I'm like, wow. Uncomfortable. You're sitting there sweating, man, and you don't understand, and everyone's looking at you, and you can see that they understand and you don't understand, but you have to work through it. Tough time, but people who put our mental feet to the fire are doing us a tremendous favor, because they're clarifying our thinking and they're making us solid. And the nice thing, like when we critique presentations, we go anywhere in the country, from Ohio State Social Psych, and we make our presentation. Believe me, there's very few effective objections made to our presentations because we've already heard them all in this format, which is safe, if you will. So this idea of discussing ideas and looking at contradictions within ideas is hugely important, right, to the development of science. So these, through competing ideas, we learn to think critically, we become better thinkers. We can ask the question, what does this tell us, right? what I'm hearing now, what does this tell us about human nature? What does this tell us about the situation in which people find themselves? So we start talking about our experiments or our observations, and we get clear on what a study tells us, but then there's that flip side, and this is part of critical thinking. Well, this study tells us this, that, and the other thing, but then what does the study not tell us? What is absent? What is not being said? And note, your parents probably use this against you to a certain extent, and you'll probably use it against your children. That is, you listen to your child explain something to you, especially your adolescents. They explain something, and often what's most important is what has been left out. Right? What weren't you told? So what does it tell us? What doesn't it tell us? What questions does it raise? And that's the beauty. Great studies generate more questions than answers, because then it prompts us to move forward with science. How might we answer those questions? And that was where I was with von Hippel, right? It's like, okay, here's what I haven't told you. Whoa, this is what it doesn't. This is what it means, and then how can I get to the bottom of that, right? So what did we find? What does it mean? These become absolutely critical aspects, and your chance to practice it is in our first paper in this class, and this is the critique of Rosenhan, 1973. So what do? You go into the first module. This is where we're at, right? And you see the paper assignment. You listen to this lecturette. You've read the chapter in the book, and remember, the chapter in the book is supporting what we're talking about here. I'm just being more specific, right? So you're going to summarize Rosenhan's paper in no more than 2 paragraphs. So you read the paper, and then you give a summary, which someone who hasn't read the paper would then basically understand what the paper is about, right? So you got to be, and this is a test of your writing skill, to what extent can you do an informative, effective summary, right? Then find an article that supports or refutes the Rosenhan paper and summarize it. So now you have to test your library skills. You have to go onto the library website, and there's a huge number of papers out there, that's why I chose this paper, that then respond to Rosenhan's paper. So what happened? Rosenhan put out his paper, and a bunch of people in psychology, the business of psychology, read this paper and they go, wow, awesome, or they go, oh no, I don't think so. So you might find papers that have a tremendous amount of support for Rosenhan's paper, or you might find a paper that refutes it extensively. But it's your job to do the library research to find that paper that you want to use for part 2. So find an article that supports or refutes, or does both for the Rosenhan paper, and summarize it. And then finally, the third part of the assignment, as explained in the prompt, is you're going to integrate both positions with your position, because you're allowed a position as well, right? And paper, Rosenhan's position, response person's position, your position. I want them all clearly delineated. We shouldn't have to guess at that when we read your paper, right? Integrate all of it together. Ultimately suggest what might be done in the future to improve the mental health system. So you might wonder, what is the Rosenhan paper about? Well, the paper is named on being sane in insane places, and what Rosenhan and his people did is they went and they pretended in a very mild way to perhaps need to be committed to a mental institution. And then they recorded what happened to them once they entered the mental institution. It's a fascinating paper, right? And very controversial, so that kind of makes it cool. Right? Here's Rosenhan. The fact of the matter that we've known for a long time, the diagnoses are often not useful or reliable. But we have nevertheless continued to use them. We now know that we cannot distinguish insanity from sanity. Rosenhan's position, right? You may agree, you may not agree. Believe me, there's a lot of people in the business who agree or don't agree, and that's why I chose this paper. We'll see that we're going to, in fact, have assignments that are very similar to this as we go down the road, because you guys are bright, and I don't want to be telling you what to think. Now, I do want to help you with enhancing your thinking skills. So that's where I kind of come into this. Not to tell you what to think, but to introduce you to new techniques for thinking, if you will. All right? So, thinking about psychology, thinking about what constitutes insanity, and notice that sanity and sanity are not terms that really exist in psychology. Where do the terms sanity or insanity exist, actually? And if you say the legal system, then you're right on the money. And again, self-promotion time. If you want to take psych and law with me, we do psych and law in the spring now, sometimes in the summer, but reliably every spring we do psych and law. And I've been teaching, I don't know, psych and law since about 2004. So popular class, a lot of fun. So we do a whole long section on sanity and insanity, but from a legal context, not a psychological context. So admittedly, there's more to it. When one wants to be a significant player in a domain, right, one needs to immerse oneself in that domain. You really have to jump in with both feet. One often needs to conduct literature review that would require reading every paper that responded to Rosenhan, and that's not something I'm going to ask you to do. But if you were in a graduate school context and you wanted to use Rosenhan as a jumping off point for creating a dissertation, let's say, then you'd probably have to read every paper that ever reacted to Rosenhan. You become an expert in that subfield, right? This might lead to a meta-analysis where findings from multiple papers are combined, they're tested statistically to come to an overall representative conclusion. So the meta-analysis takes, maybe 50 research papers and combines the ideas. I'm going to make one of those papers, a meta-analysis, available to you in a later assignment, and that will be from Pete Ditto. And it asks an interesting question. I know I'm getting a little off topic, but I tend to do that. It asks the interesting question, are conservatives or liberals more biased? And I think we should probably do that one, especially since it's an election year. So but I'm going to give you a choice in that assignment of 2 or 3 different papers. So, expertise though in a field is not easily achieved. Genius is like 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, or some such silliness like that. So we're about done with this. You got a leg up on your assignment. That's where we're going with that. The prompt is obviously far more complete. So let's call it good. And Boots is going to say goodbye to us. The end, what do we know? Again, I want to remind you, you got questions, what are you going to do? I want to see you in the Zoom session, or I want to see you at office hours. Even if you don't have questions, actually I do want to see you. I'm going crazy in my house here, all right? I don't go out. We're all freaking quarantined and go out almost rarely. Don't get to hang out with friends. Don't get to do shit. I mean, but that's the way that is. So this interaction I treasured with you guys, and I hope that we can have some more of it. So take care. Stay safe and healthy, and I'm working on some more of these for you. So goodbye.